Okay, today we're doing a review of an earlier section of Beitsa, at least for part of the time. Starting on Daf Gimel at base. This has to do with the first sugya, where the Gemora tries to figure out what the Mishnah meant when Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were arguing about a Beitsa shenolda b'Yom Tov, and Beis Shammai said you can eat it, Beis Hillel said you can't eat it. The Gemora said, why is Beis Hillel against eating it? We had four opinions in the Gemora: Rav Nachman, Rav Yosef, Rav Yitzchak, and Rabbah. And in the end, only really three of them stand. Rabbah, who says that the reason is a kind of a muksa deraisa, what's called hachama de Rabbah, that the Torah requires a suda chashuva, as Rashi puts it. And if this was prepared from another time other than Chol, then it's a problem. Then we have Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, who each one says it's a different kind of a gezerah, a general gezerah against Heros Shemachanoshrim, fruit that fell off the tree on Yom Tov or Shabbos, this Asur, and this would be included, or Mashkim Shazavu, which would be juices that came out of fruits that are standing to be squeezed, so we're afraid you might squeeze them, so this would be a bit similar. It might also be included in that gezerah, according to one of the Amoraim. So the Gemora, to challenge three of those opinions, really just two of them, brings a Beitsa. In that Beitsa, on Daf Gimel Amud Beis, which starts with the word Meisaveh, which is about 8 lines down, we have in the middle of that Beitsa a cryptic line that says the suffix is asur. And if it's talking about a Beitsa shenolda b'Yom Tov, which the beginning of the Beitsa seemed to indicate, the Gemara says it's good according to Rabbah, why the suffix should be asur. If you have a suffix, if it was born on Yom Tov or not, that would mean you have a suffix deraisa, because his problem is what we call muksa deraisa. It's an isser deraisa. So if you have an isser deraisa and you have a suffix, whether it's this egg is part of that isser, so then it would be suffix deraisa l'chumra. That would make sense. But according to the other two mandomrim, Rabbi Yitzchak and Rav Yosef, the Gemara says, why would the Beitsa say suffix is asur? Their isser is only isser d'Rabbanan. In Isurim d'Rabbanan, we have a rule that suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula, which should be mutter. So why did the Beitsa say it's asur? So the Gemara comes up with a very interesting option, that it could be that the Beitsa at this point is switching subjects. It's keeping it to a Beitsa idea, but a different kind of a Beitsa. This time a Beitsa of a treifa. So suffix Beitsa would be it's a suffix if it's from an animal that was a treifa. So just like a treifa animal is asur to eat, its Beitsa is also asur to eat. And therefore, if that's what we're talking about, the suffix being asur, that would make sense, because we're talking about a suffix treifa. According to that turns out to be, yes, a suffix deraisa l'chumra. So that would be just like we said in Rabbah, that it would make sense that the suffix is asur because suffix deraisa l'chumra. So the Gemara says that's all well and good, except the last case of the Beitsa. The last case of the Beitsa, after saying suffix is asur, it goes ahead and says, and if this egg got mixed up with 1,000 other eggs, then they are all asur. Which means we're not letting you employ bittul. Normally when one thing that's asur falls in a lot of things that are the same type of thing that are mutter, we have a din called bittul, to permit the isser. Over here the Beitsa is saying we're not going to rely on the bittul. So the Gemara says again, according to those who say that we're talking about, like the beginning of the Beitsa was said, we're talking about a Beitsa shenolda b'Yom Tov. If we're still talking about a Beitsa shenolda b'Yom Tov, which we said according to Rabbah you can say, then this is still talking about a Beitsa shenolda b'Yom Tov, and it's telling you that if it fell into 1,000, this suffix egg that is nolda b'Yom Tov, it fell in to 1,000, it's not batal. Why? Because it's a davar sheyesh lo matirim. It's a rule the Rabbanan made that when something's anyways going to become mutter in a few hours, why use a kind of a b'diavad heter now when you could eat it lichatchila later. So, according to that pshat, again, if we're talking about Beitsa Shnol to be Yom Tov, which after Yom Tov this egg will be completely mutter, it's only a problem on Yom Tov but not after Yom Tov, so then that would make sense. On Yom Tov, if it falls into other eggs that are mutter, we can't rely on bittul because it's a davar sheish lo matirim, and we're not allowed to rely on bittul when you have a davar sheish lo matirim. But if, according to the other answer that the Gemora gave, according to Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, that the Beitsa suddenly switched to a different kind of an egg that was an Isser D'Oraisa, a Suffolk Treifa egg, and that's what we're talking about fell into 1,000, then we don't understand. That's not a davar sheish lo matirim. That's not, a Treifa egg is not going to become mutter if you just wait a little while. It's not like the case of Noldo B'Yom where we could be mutter if you wait just a little while, so it's not a davar sheish lo matirim. Davar sheish lo matirim means if you wait a little while, it'll become mutter. This isn't one of those cases. A Suffolk Treifa would not be in that category. So then why does the Beitsa say that if it falls into 1,000, it doesn't become a batal, it doesn't become mutter? Why not? What's preventing the bittul? In this case, it's not a davar sheish lo matirim, according to these Amoraim, who defended themselves by saying the Beitsa is switching to a Suffolk Treifa egg, so it's not a davar sheish lo matirim. Why would the last halacha be true that we're not going to let it be batal? Why not? Bittul is a din d'oraisa. The Rabbanan do prevent bittul from taking place at certain junctures, like davar sheish lo matirim. But why would they prevent it here? It's not a davar sheish lo matirim. To which the Gemora says, but it's true. Beitsa, a normal Beitsa, let's say that's from a treifa animal, is not a davar sheish lo matirim, because you can't just wait a little while and make it, and it'll become mutter. But it is a davar chashuv. At least according to certain opinions, it could be considered a davar chashuv. The Gemora reveals that there is such a thing called davar chashuv, that in the world of bittul, we have another exception, just like davar sheish lo matirim is an exception where we don't employ bittul, we don't rely on bittul. So too, if the davar chashuv, the Rabbanan again stepped in and said, don't rely on bittul when it's a davar chashuv. The svara being, you can't say that it became batal and not chashuv when it really is a davar chashuv. Something that's so chashuv we can't rely on bittul as having nullified it, because it's a very chashuv thing. It doesn't make sense to say that it was batal. So there's a rule midrabanan not to consider it batal. Why would an egg be considered a davar chashuv? What makes it a davar chashuv? So the Gemora says, like today, in our day and age, if an egg is something that's only sold by unit, that means it's counted. When I go to the counter to pay for all my eggs, they say, well, how many do you have? And I say, I have a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen, and that's how I pay according to the number of eggs I've taken, and not according to the weight. That means each individual one is very chashuv, so chashuv that I'm paying separately for each individual one. And if I open up the package and it's not exactly that amount, I pay less, because each one is individually chashuv, and each one I'm paying for individually. That shows how chashuv each individual one is. But in their day, it turns out, not every single case did the store owner sell his eggs by unit. It turns out sometimes he used to sell it by weight. So it turns out that eggs in those days were, yes, sometimes sold by unit, but yes, sometimes sold by weight. So the Gemora says now that it's a bit of a gray area, it will depend on a girsa in the Mishnah in Orla.
Depends on what's...
Whether or not we consider a davar chashuv and not batul will depend on the girsa in the Mishnah in Orla. Why? Because that Mishnah in Orla is the one we're talking about, where it says a davar chashuv is not batul, and specifically the idea that when it's counted, it's not batul. If the store owner sells it by unit, by counting it, it's not batul. But there's 2 different girsos. One girsa would imply it has to be only counted. If it's only counted, then it's a davar chashuv. That would be like the eggs of today, that people only sell it by unit, they don't sell it by weight. But in their day, they did both. So the Gemora says if you need it to be exclusively sold by unit, in their day it wasn't. So then eggs would not be a davar chashuv, and therefore there should have been bittul. But if you go with the other girsa that says that, we'll see there's another girsa in the Mishnah Orla, and according to that girsa, we don't need it to be only counted always. We can also consider davar chashuv something that's sometimes counted, part of the time counted. It is counted, but not always, but it is counted, so therefore it can be considered davar chashuv. According to that opinion, we could explain the Beitsa that says that it's not batel, that this egg is not batel. So here, for a whole different reason, not because of davar sheish lo materim, but for a different reason, midrabanan, a different loophole, as it were, where if it's a davar chashuv, it's not batel. Perhaps that's why the Beitsa said the egg is not batel.
It's davar chashuv, right?
Because it's davar chashuv. The only question is an egg truly a davar chashuv or not? Just 1 second. Okay. So here we have the Gemora is about to present the Mishnah that we've been alluding to. We'll see the Mishnah in Orla and where this actual girsa occurs, where we're saying it has two different possibilities. Okay. So we will start the Gemora.
It's done, right?
Maybe a little bit before that, just to get a running start. In the line, it's about maybe 10 lines before the wide lines of the Gemora. The first word in the line being biruba, although that won't be the first word of our sentence.
Correct.
The second word in the line, viki tema, is I think where it would be appropriate to start. Again, we're trying to figure out why this egg is not batel. And we said according to Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak that it's talking about a Beitsa of a treifa, it should be batel.
Yeah.
And now we're sort of trying to understand it according to them. So we say v'chi tema. Go ahead.
Beitsa Yeshiva, live butler.
If what?
Beitsa's chashuv.
If you say.
If you say.
If you'll try to answer the kasha, why it's not batel is because it's a davar chashuv, and there's a rule that what? Lo batla, a davar chashuv is not batel. So is Beitsa for sure a davar chashuv? So we say ha neicha.
Neicha lemanda Omar goes on Chutz and says Hamshadarko limonos shaninu. All that it's ways to be counted.
In the Mishnah in Orla, which we haven't even seen yet, but it's been alluded to a number of times in our discussion. We're going to see that when it says something's not batel, sometimes, according to one opinion, it says, you know what's not batel? Kol, any food or whatever, shedarka limonus, which is to be counted. Then, if you say kol, now we have a rule. When we see the word kol, especially in Chazal, in a Mishnah or Beitsa, the Gemora says kol la'asuri mai. The word kol is always to bring an extra thing in. So then we understand it's anything that is counted, right? In other words, not a thing which is special that's counted. Anything that's counted. So that would even include something that's not counted always, but anything that is counted even sometimes. So then it would be good, because an egg is like that. An egg is something that is at least sometimes counted. Its weight is to be counted sometimes. So if you had kol, the word kol, if that's your girsa in the Mishnah in Orla, and that it's being more inclusive, it's including even marginal things like an egg that's only sometimes counted would be included in this rule of what's not batul, and therefore it would be included in the davar chashuv, and it might be the pshat in our Mishnah. Why it's not batul. Ella, but the problem is there's not only one opinion as to how we read the Mishnah in Orla, there's also another opinion. Ella, but Lamanda Omer S. The one who says that the proper girsa is S.
Specific, right?
Shadarka, right. S is much more specific. It's not kol, like all-inclusive, like anything under the sun that's counted. It's S. This specific thing. A specific thing that's counted is like saying one specific thing, meaning it has to be always counted. So therefore, if that's the girsa, then it has to be something that's exclusively counted, never weighed, and eggs in their day were sometimes weighed. True, they were often not weighed, but they weren't all. They were often sold by unit, but they're also sometimes sold by weight. So then the word S would exclude that. If what's not batul, what's chashuv and not batul is an S shadarko, only something that's S shadarko, then eggs wouldn't count. So therefore the Gemora says if that would be the girsa, what? Ma'ikal Meimar, which means,
what is that to say?
Which you translate into regular English meaning, what can you, Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, say? You claim that the Beitsa switched in the middle to a Beitsa of a treifa, which is not a davar sheishel matirim. So why in the fourth halacha of the Beitsa to say it's not batul? Why is it not batul? And don't tell me it's a davar chashuv, because that'll only work according to the Ma'amar of kol. Shadar Kalimanos. Then a Beitsa could be considered davar chashuv, and that would explain why it's not batul. But according to the other Manda Omer of S Shadar Kalimanos, then we don't have a proper explanation. What will you, Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, say? Because we know according to Rabbah, we already have a pshat in the in the Beitsa. Right? It's talking about Beitsa Shnol B'Yom, and we have everything works out. Why is it Safek Aser? Because it's Safek Deraisa, according to Rabbah. Why is it not batul? Because it's davar sheishel material. According to Rabbah, everything works out perfectly. According to Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, that it's switched to a Beitsa treif in the middle. Then we have trouble with why Safek Aser. No, why Safek Aser makes sense now because it's a Safek Deraisa. But why is it not batul? That didn't work out. Now so far we haven't exactly worked that out. Okay, but before we give them a chance to answer, we're going to show that Mishnah that we've been alluding to. Gemora often does that. It alludes to something and then all of a sudden it brings it up just because it wants to clear the air. So now we're going to have this Mishnah in Orla, which everything's been based on, where we hope to find what? That's something that's a davar chashuv, which in this case means it's counted, is what? Not batul.
So S means it's not batul, right?
No, S would mean it's only counted. But kol would mean it's even sometimes counted. So whichever the girsa is would explain what's a davar chashuv and not batul. And according to one definition, egg could be included, and according to the other definition, egg would not be included. Okay, so let's see the actual Beitsa that the Mishnah in Orla that we've been alluding to. Isnan, because we learn in a Mishnah in Orla, Kiloi Hakerem. Tilton. Tilton are like a certain kind of bean, I think, in their day.
Bundles of...
beans, we think today beans are like these round little things. How can you have a bundle of them? But really, beans grow like in a pod. So you could have them growing on their stalk, and those could be put in bundles. Okay, now we'll see why it matters if they're in bundles.
Beans, right?
It's a kind of a bean, I think. Again, it's not that important for our purposes here. But the main thing we're saying is that it's some kind of a bundle, okay? And it's of kiloi hakerem. What's kiloi hakerem? What we call normally...
Kerem is...
Well, kerem is a vineyard.
Kiloi
is a shortening of the word...
Kiloim.
Kiloim, right? Kiloim. Which means what?
Crossbreed.
Huh?
Crossbreed.
Crossbreed, but not only crossbreed, but also things that grow together. Right? Things that aren't supposed to grow together and they grow together are kiloim.
Drafted, right?
Huh?
Drafted.
Not always grafted, in case where two plants are growing together. Like, for example, the classic case and the Beitsa case is where you're talking about a wheat plant growing together with a grapevine. Right? Then it's a big problem if they're even growing in the same proximity with each other. They're considered to be nourishing from each other, as it were, and they're growing together, even though they're not physically together, but they're close enough to be a problem. It's as if they got help from each other, and that makes them usher.
So what could you produce from grape and wheat?
Not necessarily they have to be grafted together. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. It's not because they become some new thing. By the way, even if, like today, they say they grafted, what was it? Tangerine and an orange, you get a clementino, right, or whatever. But it could be after it's already done, you're allowed to eat it. Just not allowed to do it, not allowed to have them grow together. But afterwards, if it happened to have been done, let's say, by a goy, and there was no real isser in it, so then theoretically you could eat it. I'm not saying a general rule, there could be exceptions, but what I'm trying to impress upon you is the isser of growing things together. There's a Maseches Kiloim, right?
Yeah.
That's a very complicated Masechta if you've ever seen all the pictures of different patches of vegetables growing in proximity to each other. How can I plant all my vegetables in one patch? They used to have these little tiny backyards. They wanted to grow a lot of vegetables in the backyard so they could be self-sufficient, right? So how can they grow it in a small area? If they grow it too close together, it's going to be a problem of kiloim. So there's all sorts of charts and rules about how close they can be together. Sometimes if you have it growing in a certain kind of a patch and it's clearly different than the other patch, it's okay. Anyhow, my main point, I think, it just should be noted that the Isser is that things shouldn't grow together. And if they do grow together, even if they don't become a third species, not because they become necessarily a third species, just the act. Huh?
Yeah, Coke or something in the fridge.
Coke?
Yeah, it's keeping me awake.
You're telling me or asking me?
It's getting something.
Right, turn the camera off then, please.
Sure.
Okay, let's continue with the Mishnah and Orla, which our Gemora is quoting, principally to bring the two girsas to light of what's called a davar chashuv and not batal. The Mishnah speaks about es shadavar, es shadarko limnos. That's one girsa, or possibly kol shadarko limnos. So it makes a big difference whether we would include eggs, the Gemora say, because if it's an es, then it has to be specifically counted, and if it's also weighed, it wouldn't be kadavar chashuv. But if it's just kol, then it could even be something which is part of the time counted, that would include eggs. So we're saying, where does this girsa come up anyway? So it comes up in this Mishnah. What does it say over there? Misha hayelo chavile tiltan. Someone who had bundles of these bean stalks or whatever. But the problem was, they were not regular ones, they were shel kiloi hakerem. They were of the general term which is called kiloi hakerem, which is a misnomer because it's not only if it's a kerem that might be doraisa, that it has to be a kerem to be asur doraisa, but at least midrabanan, the rabbanan included in the isra of kiloim and any two species that grow together that are actually different species. So if these tilton grew, let's say in a kerem or some other species, and they grew together in the same patch, too close together, they make each other asur. And the Torah says they must be destroyed. Okay? And it uses the term, what? Yidalku.
Yeah.
They shall be
Destroyed.
burnt, which is the best way of destroying something, right? So that's the general halacha. Even with these lowly bean stalks and so forth, it's still a problem of kiloim, still has to be dealt with in the normal way. What's the normal way of dealing with kiloim? If you really know things grew together improperly, they become destroyed, because you can't get any benefit from it, right?
Yeah.
But, and this is the part that interests us, it says in the same Mishnah in Orla, what?
This arbu chayros.
If what? Nisarvu, they got mixed up, like the word ta'arovis.
Yep.
Then what happens if they got mixed up bi'acheros with others, I suppose, that were mutter? So these asur ones got mixed up with other chavile tiltan, which were mutter ones. So now you can't distinguish between the two. There should be what? Bittul.
Yeah.
That's the normal din when something that's asur gets mixed up with something that's mutter, and you can't distinguish them. And then those, even v'acheros, those other ones that got mixed up with the first batch, v'acheros, they got mixed up with others. So now I had something asur that got mixed up with a certain batch of good stuff, and then that whole batch got mixed up with another batch. So it's like 2 steps removed, right? But the same halacha is kulan yidalku, right? It's a little bit like our Beitsa about the eggs, and even if it got mixed up with 1,000 eggs, doesn't matter how many you have, there's no bittul. There's no bittul. It's all asur, meaning there's no bittul. And that's why they all have to get destroyed. They have to all have the same din as the original chavile tiltan, which was to be destroyed. It didn't help that they got mixed in with another batch of good stuff, and even if that whole batch got mixed up with another batch, so there's a huge reason saying bittul now. We don't say bittul, and they all get destroyed. But that's only what? Divrei Rabbi Meir. But Achas Umasayim. Okay? So the Rabbanan say Ya'alu. What's Ya'alu?
Go up.
They go up. That's the expression the Chazal use for saying that something could be batal. It goes up, meaning it could come out and be used.
Could be used.
It's like saying it could come up and be out of that mixture. I could take something out of that mixture, right? Let's say one chavilah of tiltan that was kiloim got mixed up with 100 of good stuff, right? So, can I take chavilot out of there and use them? Well, it should be batal. But the reason is because Chazal gave different ratios, just like we say with meat and milk, 60-1 and all of that kind of stuff. There's ratios. We have to achieve a certain ratio. That's a certain halacha midrabanan that when do we say bittul? If you have the proper ratio, like 60-1 for meat and milk, right? Every different isser has its own ratio. So they say, what's the ratio for this one? Chamim omri yalu ba'achas umasayim. If the one chavila fell into what? Matayim chavilot that were good, my bad chavilah fell into 200 that were good, then altogether I have 201. Like 200 to 1, as it were. So that is the ratio they determined for kiloim. But when do you say bittul? In kiloim, when you have 200 to 1. Just like everybody knows that in milk and meat you have to have 60 to 1. In this you have to have 200 to 1. Okay, but Rabbi Meir says that doesn't even work here, 200 to 1. Because he says chavilot are chashuv. Right? Obviously, that's who we're looking at. We're looking at Rabbi Meir's shita here, not the Rabbanan. The Rabbi Meir, for some reason, is the one we're looking at here. Because at least Rabbi Meir would give us one shita to apply to our brisa. We have a brisa saying we don't do bittul with the egg. So if we have Rabbi Meir fitting in, we could say, oh, it's going like Rabbi Meir. Yep. But again, does Rabbi Meir consider a chavilah chashuv? Yes, because he says there's no bittul. He says they all get burnt. Even 200 to 1, all gets burnt. What about 200 to 1 being the normal ratio for being bittul, doing bittul in kiloya karen? He agrees to the ratio. Doesn't disagree to this ratio idea. But he says the chavilah is chashuv. It can't be batul. I guess that's part of the maklokas here between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim. Is a chavilah chashuv or is it not chashuv? Maybe. I'm just conjecturing. You follow?
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out whether chavilah is considered chashuv or not. Chachamim say it's not chashuv, but Rabbi Meir holds it is chashuv.
Now, why would you think it might be considered chashuv based on our previous discussion of eggs?
Because it depends if it's weighed to be counted weighed together or to be weighed separately.
No, not weighed. Weighed was not a reason to consider chashuv. Counted. So if I have chavilot, do I sell them by weight?
No.
Or by counting the chavilot? So that's going to be a question. Maybe that's a question of how they're sold. Okay, but let's see how the Gemora. So we basically have a machlokas here, Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. In a case where, let's say, one chavilah of kiloya keren fell into 200 chavilot that are not kiloya keren, that are mutter dika chavilot, would you say there's bittul because it reached the ratio that the Chazal have fixed for kiloya keren of 200 to 1? Or you say, no, there's no bittul because it's a davar chashuv. That seems to be the maklokas Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. Right? Right?
Yeah.
And so the Gemora explains, why does Rabbi Meir say it's not batul, that the chavilah is not batul? Shahaya Rabbi Meir oimer, because Rabbi Meir used to say, and here's the famous phrase, that you need es shadarko limano. So this is where we find the machlokes of the two girsot. Some people say that Rabbi Meir says you need what? Es shadarko limanos. And some people say at this point in the Mishnah, instead of saying Shahai Rabbi Meir Omer es shadarko limanos, he has a girsa of what? Kol. Word kol is the important word. Anything that's counted. Even some of the time. Okay, but our Gemara is not presenting that, but that we know that's what's going on behind the scenes, because the Gemara already let us know that there's two manda omrim in this particular line of the Mishnah. Shahaya Rabbi Meir Omer es shadarki limanos, that's one manda omer. There's another manda omer that reads at this point in the Mishnah, Shahaya Rabbi Meir Omer kol shadarki limanos. Right?
Yeah.
So, according to that, it's going to make a big difference for the Beitsa case. Okay? The Chachamim Omrim Mekadesh Devarim Bilvad. Okay, now what does that mean? Mekadesh in this sense is a weird term, but it's based on the Torah's word. Because when the Torah says they should get burnt and destroyed, it says tukad eish. It gets tukad eish, which is tukdash. If you read it in the pasuk, it looks like tukdash. It becomes Kodesh. So the Chazal use that as an expression of when does it get burned and destroyed? When it gets Kodesh, as it were. It's not really Kodesh. Okay?
Yeah.
So when two things grow together, the Torah says you have to destroy it. At one point the Torah says, tu kadesh, tu kdash, as if it becomes Kodesh, so the Chazal use that word, mekadesh. In other words, when two things grow together, one is mekadesh the other. What does it mean it's mekadesh the other? It makes it usher to eat, and therefore you have to destroy it. Okay? So the Chazal are saying over here that you only say that one little thing, like a chavilah, will make all the other ones Kodesh and have to be destroyed in 6 things. In other words, according to the Chachamim, only 6 things are so chashuv that they won't be batal. And therefore everything becomes Kodesh, meaning usr, and therefore everything has to be burnt and destroyed. And there's no bittul. Okay? So Rebbe Meir says this chavilah tiltan is chashuv. Why is it chashuv? Because it's counted. Okay? And then we have a question in our Gemora, well, how is it counted? Is it only counted? Is it counted some of the time? Is it like our egg? Is it not like our egg? Depends on the gears. But in the Mishnah itself, where Rebbe Meir is arguing against the Chachamim, what is the argument between Rebbe Meir and the Chachamim? Rebbe Meir says, look, anything under the sun, even a little thing like chavilei tiltan, which is like a nothing thing. But what makes it chashuv and not batul? It's counted. So in this case, it would make you destroy everything, because there's no bittul, because it's a davar chashuv, chavilei tiltan or chashuv. The Rabbanan say, no, this chavilei tiltan, that's not chashuv. I don't care if you count it, I don't care what. It's not chashuv. It's a little thing of beans, a little stalk of beans. Well, what makes that chashuv? Because you count it when you sell it? Nah. What makes something chashuv? Something has to be really chashuv. A davar chashuv will not be batul. So it's a machlokas. What's called a davar chashuv? Rabbi Meir says, you know what's called a davar chashuv? Anything that's counted. And we have a problem in the girsa. Anything that's counted always, or something counted some of the time. But something has to be counted to be, if it's counted, it's chashuv, and not batul. That will stop the bittul. The Chachamim say, no, that's not called chashuv just because it's counted. You count little matchsticks. That makes it chashuv? No. So the fact that something's counted doesn't make it chashuv in this halacha of bittul. What makes it chashuv and not batul in the halachas of bittul? 6 particular things, which the Mishnah is going to speak out now. So that means that only those 6 things, not just general anything, right? I don't know how we pass on the halacha. Okay, it could be passing like Rebbe Meir, that it's enough to be just sometimes counted or all the times counted. But it could be like the Rabbanan, there has to be these specific 6 things that are chashuv. Whatever, right? So it's a different question. What is called a davar chashuv? But in Rebbe Meir's shita, that counting makes something chashuv, we also have a machlokas and girsos, whether he said es shadarka limanus or kol shadarka limanus.
Alright, good. That's interesting.
Do you want to see those 6 things, or you want to push it off till tomorrow?
There's another 5 minutes.
Okay.
So,
Let's do a minute. Okay. So they say what? Let's read it again. Chachamim omrim, eino mekadesh. We can't say there's no bittul, and because it's so chashuv and it will make everything else be destroyed. That's called mekadesh. Ella, only what? Only 6 things, which I guess it doesn't even say what they are. Oh yeah, it's going to say in a minute. So the Chachamim say there's 6 things. Rabbi Kiva Omer. Shiva. He says, he agrees basically with the Rabbanan, that not like Rabbi Meir, that just being counted is enough. It has to be something you really consider chashuv. But there are 7 things, not just 6 things. Ve'eluhein, these are them. Perech. I'd like to see in Rosh what these things are. I think that's walnuts. Again, different kinds of nuts. Oh no, those are rimonim. Rimonim, special kind of rimonim. Closed barrels. Right, taradin, I think spinach. Chalfi, I'm not sure what that is. Kalche, kruv. Stalks of the kruv.
Kalas means a sword,
Yeah. Or a pumpkin, right? Yavanis, a Greek gourd or a Greek pumpkin. Those are the 6 very, very chashuv things that don't get batal according to the Rabbanan, that they don't agree with the Rebbe Meir, that's just being counted as enough. You have to have something that really is chashuv. These are the things that really are chashuv. In their day, these were like, I guess, delicacies that were considered very chashuv. Okay, and Rabbi Akiva Mosif, Kikaros Shabalabais, right? Loaves of bread that were made by a balabais, right? Homemade bread. Okay? Aroy orla. Aroy la kilaya keren. Okay, we'll have to figure out what that means tomorrow, but we see that there's this basic machlokus between Rabbi Meir on the one side and all the other Chamim on the other side, including Rabbi Akiva, really, whether this rule of something chashuv that's not batal is specific things that were considered chashuv in their day, or according to Rabbi Meir, anything that's counted, that already shows that it's chashuv. Okay, that's the basic machlokus that we see here, but for our purposes, for our original question of how to read the Beitsa concerning Beitsa, where it said if it fell into 1,000 it was still usher, we're trying to figure out how that could be, if it's talking about a Beitsa treifa. So we said it all comes down to, in this Mishnah that we just read of Shitas Rabbi Meir, that he says if it's counted, it's a davar chashuv and it's not batul. And we see that from the Chavile Tiltan case. Did he use a rule that was specific, es shadarko limanos, or a more general rule, kol shadarko limanos? If he used the specific case, then it wouldn't include eggs. If you use the more general terms, then it would include eggs.
Specific.
Turn off the camera, please.
Thank you.
Back to you.